So our next speaker this morning is Rod Tyler, founder and inventor with Filtrex International. We have known Rod whenever we do these articles, we always look back in the annals of the magazine, and I think, Rod, we were going all the way back to the early 90s, if not, sooner. So, earlier. Rod is a graduate of The Ohio State University. He's a certified professional agronomist and has been working with compost for nearly 30 years. Rod has worked with the U.S. Composting Council, where he served as president and vice president, and his best-selling book, Winning the Organics Game, The Compost Marketer's Handbook, discusses issues related to using compost in all the major markets and is a leading textbook in the industry. And it's really interesting, that was 96, to look at that and then look where we are today. It's all very fascinating. As founder and former CEO of Filtrex International, Rod is also the inventor of the patented Filtrex gardening applications. Where did I miss a line here? A tubular containment system for compost and soil products used in agriculture and gardening applications, stream bank stabilization, and environmental restoration. I have to tell you, we're in the Lehigh Valley in Pennsylvania, and lots of construction going on for new warehouses and complexes, and everywhere we go, there are socks. They're just everywhere. So of course I have to admire them. Rod, welcome.
Well, thank you, Nora. Nice job with your presentation. Thank you for that. It's always good to see all the efforts that make the organics get to us that we can use, right? And so I'm going to go through a lot of slides today very quickly, but I want you to realize this has been a fantastic ride for me in this industry. I basically grew up in the organics industry reading Biocycle magazine, and I could not imagine being where I am without it. We used to fight over who got it in the office first to read it. And I would comb that thing from cover to cover and make calls and see who's doing what. And so it's always good to be with friends that you've known for maybe unfortunately too long. It's kind of embarrassingly how long the industry has been. And just a little evolution here. First of all, my marketing background, didn't know that much about marketing when I started. And so my marketing background started by trying to figure out compost, and in '95 I started Green Horizons, and we started working with composters that had blower trucks, and we started working with people to try to differentiate and separate by performance specifications for compost filter berms and blankets. And then in 2000 we branded the Filtrex stuff, and in 2001 we invented the sock. You heard her mention the landmark publications. There was actually two. One is in '96, which I was actually writing that book to get my head wrapped around the math in this industry. How many feet are in a cubic yard again? How many feet do we get in a sock? All these things, all the common math that you have, how many cubic yards spread an inch over 1,000 square feet? What is that math? And so I started doing this, and it became a book. The second one, though, is a little bit more of a landmark. The Sustainable Site represents about 25 low-impact designs that are actually using compost. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through a lot of the evolution of what we've done, and then I'm going to give you a reference point of what that can be if everybody uses these tools like we use silt fence today, or like they used to use silt fence in Pennsylvania, because I think that's really, from an industry standpoint, that gives you hope for a market that you can keep creating more product. And as New York City starts to go with more product, you have the refed activity that JD talked about creating more food waste. Where's it all going to go? I'll give you guys some hope, today. So this is where we started with filter berms. Now notice how wide these berms are. These are very ineffective and inefficient to install, but boy, oh boy, they worked. And they even worked better than silt fence. So we started off with those and blankets, and the advantages of blankets were that you could put them almost anywhere. We had great access. We worked better than straw blankets. By the way, the standard application that we started with was a 2-inch blanket over an acre. It's about 270 cubic yards an acre. But if you're doing 10 acres, it takes forever for these guys to do the work. So that's why that product never got legs, Filtrex never really made any money on compost blankets, still doesn't. We have it in our toolbox because it's a good tool. We actually have research now that we've conducted with San Diego State that a half an inch of compost on a slope is equal to or better than straw blankets that are used today. Half an inch, not 2 inches. So we have great research. Unfortunately, the habits of people buying stuff, and you'll see why here in a minute, because of warehousing and distribution. So how do we make money? Well, we started off by making our customers money. We came up with ways for them to increase their efficiency of installation of these socks, okay? And we had to use blower trucks because we had no other way of going to market. You know, we didn't have any partners, we didn't have any Wall Streeters, okay? And we didn't have any way to systematize our business. So we did not go through distribution like a lot of companies do. And we kept looking at our business model. What could we sell? We can sell mesh, we can sell installs, we can sell equipment, but we didn't have the money to go buy the blower trucks. So we decided to target this thing called silt fence. We decided to target something that was actually very, very easy to win with because it was such a miserable failure in the field. Where and how somebody invented this stuff, I hope they're not in here, but I mean, I just don't get how when you stand up a piece of fabric and you expect it to hold back a wall of water and sediment, any engineer thinks that's gonna work. I just don't get it, you know? So we thought, well, this is kind of easy. We replaced that with a tube that's kind of squat, and the water goes through it and it filters, and you know, people got it. But it started off with perimeter control, and very quickly, rapidly, within a year, advanced to many other applications. So we started dreaming around in 2001, said, geez, well, let's put a target up there. Let's sell 30 million feet of sock. You know, that's a bunch of money, and you know, you start looking at the metrics here. You start looking at a little over 1 million cubic yards of compost and truck capacity and stuff like that. You start to look at this and say, wait a minute, if we don't have enough blower trucks out there, we're not going to sell that many feet of sock. And so, as you know, when the recession hit, we started getting some declines on people buying $300,000 and $500,000 blower trucks. But nonetheless, we kept our certification program going, which is how we grew that business. And even when the product was properly or improperly installed, we still had great results. There's supposed to be stakes in this, by the way. So this is improperly installed, and the stuff still worked. That's one of the reasons Pennsylvania took off, was because their term in a regulated or closed-door meeting was it was bulletproof compared to the silt fence and other things that they had used. Other benefits we started pushing, you know, in the northern climates, you can't really install silt fence when it's frozen ground or snowing. Obviously, you can install sock. And all these applications up until this point were with filter media, which is basically a half-inch to 2-inch product. So we started focusing on other applications with growing media, which is the half-inch minus. This is basically just your generic vanilla compost, okay? And that diversification began with different mesh and using stair-stacked applications that were vegetated. So very, very, very quickly then we started to grow, and in a matter of a couple years we came up with all these applications. And all these applications ended up becoming the Sustainable Site textbook. Now, when I ask engineers that are out there designing environmentally, what did you use to go design a stream bank or a wall or a slope, they don't really have any of these tools. And so that's one of the reasons that Britt and I wrote that. I want to point out there's a couple other landmark publications recently that have also put a little wind in our sails from using compost standpoint and for all of you, and that is the Soil and Water Connection, which we actually produced from the council when I was president, and then Britt just wrote the Compost Climate Connection last year. Britt and Sally, I'm sorry. And so Filtrex helped to sponsor both of these documents and pilot those through the U.S. Composting Council Research Foundation. But they link reasons we do what we do as organics people to the use. And remember, when you sell something in organics business, if you bump something out, you have a replacement value theory. We bumped out silt fence, we were left with that categorical value. I think you're going to talk about some replacement in your talk. You're going to hear some interesting things there. Whatever you replace, you're left with that value. But what we really need to do is we really need to talk about what that does. What's the value of the product on the ground? And these documents actually do that. So what's all the volume? What does that get us? If we replace all this stuff, we use silt socks and blankets and green walls and slopes and rivers and creeks. Well, I calculate it to be about 26 million cubic yards annually. And I had a funny talk with JD and getting ready for this talk because he was doing some work with Refed, and I said, how many cubic yards do we sell in the U.S. again for compost? And I think that's an evasive number that nobody really knows. I asked Franciosi. I don't know if we have a number from the council. But it's one of those numbers that, as a metric, we're trying to find in our industry. And in 2005, just on with the story, we invented this FX machine. We actually invented it to replace the blower truck. So it was, a $16,000 unit instead of $300,000 unit. Fortunately or unfortunately, it was not field friendly. But boy, this thing was really cool, and it made pallets. So all of a sudden, we had a way to go to distribution. The question was, could we sell to distributors? I mean, look at this embarrassing mess. Would you want to buy that? That's not consistent. So we went to these people. We said, well, what are you selling now? And they said, well, we're selling straw wattles and silt fence and turf reinforcement mat. And so you can see how compost blankets don't fit in their warehouse. But sock on a pallet could. Well, there's a problem. How do you install it? If you sell it to a contractor, how do they install it? This was a spidered up mess. So we had to figure out how to put it on a pallet. Then we had some bright people thinking that we should go another way. And we said, well, that's not really standard shipping. So we started looking at people that had already done this, the Ray Kroc type of thing. We started saying, well, why do people buy so many Big Macs? And that's actually where this term came from. And the standardization began to try to standardize a pallet like a Big Mac. Okay? Pretty simple, borrow from other people that have worked. So in 2012, we rolled out a campaign, and we started pumping these things out like Pez. And we started a certification and training program, and we came up with a national grid price for distribution, and our salespeople led that nationally. We started some branding and co-marketing with folks. The green sock is still out there. Everybody knows that's Filtrex. And as the truck started to roll out, we started doing more branding. Okay, a lot of the names that we have, if you noticed, end in a double X. Okay, and so we kind of get the Filtrex thing going. They got on pickup trucks across the country. We increased our manufacturing locations to match basically the call for distribution from national companies. So as we kind of followed our customer and followed the distribution, obviously the recession that took away the blower trucks was filled in with other people that still wanted the product. And then we had this thing called North American shale play. Well, as Nora said, in Pennsylvania, the shale game started there with oil, and the DEP requested they use sock instead of silt fence, and our business just went boom. So that's kind of what got us to 2014. I actually sold the business in 2014, and I'm on still as a founder. And what I've been asked to do now is come up with 2 ideas in the next 5 years that will produce $75 million each. So I'm going to show you what those are. If we do everything I'm talking about, this company is easily a $1 billion company, which was my original vision. So in 2014, we introduced EnviroSocks. EnviroSocks are just basically socks that have some pixie dust in them. And that pixie dust takes out heavy metals, bacteria, nutrients, and hydrocarbons. We have EPA data on this for removal rate. Britt Fawcett did the research. This year, we introduced Stormex. These are both things that I've brought to the market for the new company. And this is basically just a very simple under-the-grate filter. We're getting a lot of traction for this in California because they have a law out there for stormwater and reduction of heavy metals. It's basically a sock in a can, if you can think about that, And as Nora says, as we have these private discussions, no matter what I try to do, I see socks. It's like that movie, So I try to put a sock in everything. Sometimes it doesn't fit. And so then we started working with vertical applications. We bought a living wall company in 2014 who was working with some block. That led to several other introductions here. Greenlocks, which is a non-MSC or an MSC application, EnviroBlocks, Trinity. These are all not quite vertical, but they replace block systems. This year we introduced Vertex. This got a big kickoff in California. It's basically a sock that's in a tray, and you can grow indoor plants with it. So this was on the side of a shipping container in California. So actually you can grow ornamentals or food. And then the latest and greatest is probably my retirement, which is living shorelines. Now, this is from NOAA, which is a federally regulated organization. And notice the hard structures on the right and the soft structures on the left. And it almost looks like they even thought of the sock thing. They have edging there. And so when you start looking at the designs that we have in this marketplace now, we have revetments or dunes, and the same applications are being done. Now we are using the FX in the field. And this application where these things are stacked up become vegetated and they're almost immovable because they're all grown together. So these replacement values that we're looking at, just to let you know, the block wall business is an $8 billion industry. The silt fence business is a $2 billion industry. Whatever percentage we can get from that is up to us as marketers, but that's what those facts are. I don't know what Living Shorelines is. It's probably a $500 billion business. It's ridiculous how much money is there. Slopes, pollutant removal, home gardening, we're not going to talk about. We have a program called Garden Socks. We haven't found the right partner for that yet. And growing food is just off the charts for, scalability. The one thing I started with, which I want to end with, was how to bring this back to what does the product do. So in all those applications, we've actually monetized it now for CO2 credits and water credits and things like that, because people are starting to look at that as a value set of they have a choice here or they have a choice here and I get a credit for that. So we're starting to monetize every application, every foot of sock that goes down, every square foot of wall that's green that can filter water. And so we're starting to monetize that, and Britt Foss has done a masterful job in doing that math with us. That's all I have. I don't think we have any time for questions, but thank you.
Thank you very much, Rod. It's funny because we were using this Big Mac in the magazine and whatnot. And it's like, I guess we got to put that trademark thing in there, the registered mark. Yeah, but it's amazing when we started the article in the March-April issue. I sent Rod some questions, and one is, so what's your Big Mac? And that applies to I guess to all of us, whether you're public sector, private sector, nonprofit, is, what is your Big Mac? That's your solution, and they can be many of them. Sorry.